Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're joining us from. I'm Jonathan Bar-Said. I'm the president of the America-Israel Friendship League, and it brings me much pride in greeting you and this panel for this exciting webinar. The last 2 years of the pandemic have taught us the value of compassion, the value of life, how fragile it is. The human race is known not only on how easily we turn on each other, but actually also on how we help and support each other. Since soon after its establishment, Israel as a country has been the symbol of these kind of efforts, sending agricultural experts to fellow newly established nations in Africa, lending irrigation and water expertise to countries in Central and South America. Israel has always pursued these efforts, oftentimes without seeking public recognition. It did so because frankly, it was the right thing to do. In the last decade, IsraAid, an organization from Israel, has followed in these steps and has been taking Israeli know-how, Israeli expertise, and above all, Israeli compassion for fellow human beings to help those in need around the world at times of need. They do so without seeking public recognition. In countries like Syria, Afghanistan, and many other countries, they do so in secret because of how Israel is perceived in those countries. They do so because it's the right thing to do. I am proud not only because AFL has been bringing out these stories of Israel and Israelis for people in the United States and around the world to become aware and familiar of the wonderful things that come from Israel that have such a positive impact on the world we live in. But also I'm proud because I'm a member of IsraAid. These last few years, I've been a member of their board of directors, and I feel a small part of these efforts, hoping that I too am making a small dent out there, helping others at their time of need. I'd like to thank everyone for making the efforts of joining us today to tell the story of IsraAid's recent rescue mission in Afghanistan. This is a story that brings together Israeli know-how and innovation. It demonstrates Israeli tenacity and on-the-spot improvisation. It's a story of networking, how people around the world join forces and work together to achieve the unachievable. Frankly, there wasn't a storybook to tell them how to do it. The team that did this had an end goal, and they improvised to overcome each obstacle as it came up to achieve these goals, getting people at risk out of a war-torn country. It's a story of a few good people who took action because simply it was the right thing to do. I'm happy to turn over the mic to Wayne Firestone, our moderator, who will introduce these brave individuals and tell us this wondrous story. Thank you.
Jonathan, thanks so much for setting the stage for, as you said, just an incredibly dramatic and in some respects heartbreaking story that is happening as we speak. And I just want to say salam and shalom and welcome to all of our panelists. We're covering a lot of ground today. I want to say the same to our audience. I know we have people calling in from London. We have people calling in from San Jose, Costa Rica, Toronto, Miami, Venice, Florida, throughout the world, because indeed this is a global story. This is a story about how refugees become refugees and who is there to help them, who is there to see them, who is there to tell their stories. And it's not a surprise for me that this story begins with a journalist whose eye was on a story, which was a different story in a sense than the one we're telling today. So among our panelists today is Donna Harmon. Donna is a 25-year veteran journalist who started her career as an intern in Jerusalem with the AP, and went on to work with Christian Science Monitor and USA Today and the Jerusalem Post, and is currently a staff writer at Haaretz. And I remember reading her article in 2019 in the New York Times about a robotics team in Afghanistan and a group of girls who it was just so inspiring at the time. And we're going to circle back to that with Donna later. She'll be joined by her close friend and collaborator on this project, Roni Aboulafia, who's a prize-winning documentary filmmaker. She's a graduate of the Sam Spiegel Film and TV School, and in 2017 won the Israeli Academy Award for Best Documentary Series for a project called School of Hope. And then we're going to hear from a friend of mine whose resume is so remarkable in the context of humanitarian assistance, Yotam Polizer, joining us today from Japan, the CEO of IsraAid, Israel's largest humanitarian organization, a team of 250. But those 250 don't tell the story. What IsraAid has done and is doing, as Jonathan referred to earlier, is really remarkable around the world. Yotam has 15 years of experience in doing humanitarian assistance and relief projects, disaster relief around the world. He started in Nepal. He was there for Lesbos in Greece for the Syrian refugees, and he plays a remarkable role in this story in Afghanistan as well. For many of you, including myself, the allies on our panel are really only part of the story. The other major part of the story are the refugees themselves, the heroic, in this case, women of different generations who had to step up into roles that they perhaps had never imagined would happen. And they're with us today in different locations in Albania and in the United Arab Emirates. This wonderful ally of Israel and the United States who was put in a position of stepping up during this crisis. So we're going to meet Rudabeh Nouri, we're going to meet Romesa Katabi, and we're going to meet Ayesha Nouri shortly after we hear a little bit about how this story unfolded and what the connection is with our friends and colleagues in Israel. Donna, let me let you start us off. I know there's a lot of stories here. We're going to do our best to at least introduce the audience to how you made this miracle happen, you and your colleagues and your friends. But take us back when you first wrote that story and you first met Rudabeh and you were talking about a robotics team and the remarkable possibilities of these young women. Could you ever even imagine the situation that you found yourself in just over these past several months?
Hi, Wayne. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having us all here to tell this great story. Yes, the story starts with Rudabeh in a way. It starts with my going to Afghanistan. I spent some months going back and forth about 4 years ago, writing a story about the all-girls robotics team out of Herat, which was this fabulous little team that came over to the United States and started, getting a lot of attention at the robotics competition. And the New York Times gave me the opportunity to go spend some time with them. By the way, when I went and spent some time with the team, Rudabeh wasn't on the team anymore. She was on the very, very, very original team. So at first I didn't even meet her. And then one day I was at my hotel in Herat, and Rudabeh and her mom, who is with us, Ayesha. Hi, Ayesha. Ayesha and Rudabeh come to my hotel and they're like, what is this business? Please let me introduce you to my daughter, Rudabeh. And from then on, me and Rudabeh have been friends, which is a word that was missing in a lot of the words that were used in the introduction, which is there's a great friendship there between us. And that friendship went on over the years, and as well with a lot of the other girls who were on the team, and the mentor of the team, a fabulous woman called Hilai, and a bunch of other girls there, Sahar and Dunya, a lot of girls who I love. And then this August when, well, before August, but as August approached, and a lot of us who care about Afghanistan or are interested in Afghanistan were following events there, I was in touch with those girls a lot, and I was worried about them and scared right along with them. And at first I put something up on Instagram, which, what is that? And then I wrote an article in Haaretz about it, which I liked putting together, and I think people liked reading, but also in a way, what is that? And then I thought, well, maybe there's some way I could be of more help in some way. And I didn't know, I was wading into territory I was not familiar with, but I did realize that I had some connection, certainly more than my girlfriends, these young girls on the ground did. And I could try and figure out maybe if there was a way to help them get out of the country, which was what everyone was desperate to do in August, and what a lot of people are still desperate to do today. And the tragedy of what's going on in Afghanistan is that the evacuation, that the withdrawal of the United States and its allies was not well organized at all. It was catastrophically organized, and a lot of people just got stuck not knowing where to turn and what to do to save themselves or to escape, or they just didn't know what to do. People felt alone. And that's where a lot of people like myself, far am I the only one? I mean, there are a lot of journalists, ex-service people, just interested people, NGO people, good people who sort of bandied together with friends or with organizations, and then again with each other, and tried to find ways to assist in some way or another. So that's how the story got rolling in August, with me on WhatsApps, endless WhatsApps. And I was on a romantic holiday in Italy at the time, and it was far from romantic because I spent the whole time with Rudabeh on my WhatsApp, and trying to think of ways to be of help. And the first, should I keep talking? The story is so long, but I'll start at the beginning of it, which is that in August, we knew that the Americans were going to leave by the end of August. So it from like the 15th or so, and then when the Taliban took over suddenly, and I mean unexpectedly, shockingly, already in Kabul, everyone knew that if you could get into the airport, then you might be lucky and get on a evacuation flight. So the whole task of August basically was to get physically into the airport, which was almost impossible for most people. There were tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people thronging the airport. It was not safe. The gates were closed. The soldiers weren't letting most people in, and it was really difficult getting in. So I was trying to help Rudabeh and others, again, Sahar's family, Dunya's family, Hilai and her family, get into the airport. And what I was hearing at the time was that there were a lot of Germans had organized well. They had organized these buses that were going from different locations in the city and would then take you into the airport. Even take you into the airport is a bit of not exactly accurate, because it would take 30, 40 hours of driving around the city, going from one gate to another, stopping at checkpoints, being stopped by the Taliban, turning back. We had people sitting on those buses, and we kept I kept asking some of the girls that I know to get on these buses and try and get into the airport. And this is where my friend Roni Aboulafia comes into the story, because I was flying back from my not so very romantic holiday, back from Italy to London where I live. And I knew that I'd be off Wi-Fi for like 3-4 hours when I was in the air. And I was panicked that suddenly there would be a call, because you never know when these buses set out and from what street corner. It's all taking place on this sort of secure chatting app called Signal, a bit like WhatsApp, but more secure. And that's where the different, was in this case, the German journalists and a couple others were speaking about where the buses were. And so then I have a WhatsApp group of my girlfriends in Tel Aviv, is like my best girlfriends. And we all gather, ironically enough, to watch Homeland together back in the day. And so we're the sort of girlfriends of, what's our group called, Roni? Anyway, our Homeland group, which we keep finding different figures on Homeland we love the most, and we call our group that. Anyway, and I'm rushing with my bags to the plane, and I'm saying to my girlfriend's group, who has Signal? And Roni, who's sitting right there, goes, I have Signal. She's in Tel Aviv. I'm on my way to the plane in Italy. And I said, listen, Roni, get on this Signal group. If they say there's 6 places, take Dunya's family. If there's 4 places, take Sahar's family. If only 2, take my interpreter Rafi's family. Then to call this, take all these numbers. Goodbye, I'm going. And then I got on my plane, and that was it for 4 hours. And I got off on the other side, and Roni was like in control of the movement of people moving from here to there and trying to get into the airport and onto one of these evacuation flights. So that's when the story revved up, and Roni came into it, who's a dear friend of mine from growing up in Jerusalem and from Tel Aviv life.
Roni, so Israelis are famous for being WhatsAppers and getting stuff done. When you first heard from Donna, which part of your brain activated first? I know you have a family that cares about people in harm's way around the world, but what made you think that you we're going to maybe take off the filmmaker role and actually roll up your sleeves and get involved in this story?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Wayne. This is actually a great question that I'm not sure that I have an answer to. Of course, I want to help people, but it's a bit of a cliche, and there must be some also other underlying reasons that I'm still figuring out, or maybe it's the storyteller in me that gets hooked into something like that, but when Dana was like throwing this over to me, she was saying, okay, this is the German contact, this is the Hilai group contact, this is Rudabeh's contact, and I have never even thought too much about Afghanistan, to tell you the truth. This was like very far from me, but I was drawn into this sitting here on my like desk in Tel Aviv, and kind of like trying to figure out where in Kabul they have to be right now, and who will get there, and trying to encourage them to go and to take the risk, because some of them were girls by themselves, and they couldn't hang out at night on the streets there, and it was all very dangerous, and they were going through Taliban checkpoints, and we were getting Google messages with Google Maps locations, and then directing them to this place and to that place, and some of the girls were on other buses of other evacuations, so it was like a big thing that I just got into, and I couldn't leave. I got sucked into this on like August 26th, and I think until beginning of October, that's all I was doing for like 20 hours a day, not sleeping. And when Dana told me about this, even before the German evacuations, the buses thing started, I told her, you have to talk to Yotam. I knew Yotam for many years because my mother is the chairperson of IsraAid. So I knew he was the right person to talk to and to see and to figure stuff like that out, although this is not something that IsraAid does usually. It was also unusual for him, I think. So that's how I got, so Yotam was sitting at, Yotam was on vacation in Japan. He was in Japan, and Charlene Seidel, another Dana friend, was sitting in California. And the four of us, by the time Dana landed, one family was on the bus, and the four of us were kind of directing people, telling them where to go, trying to figure out how this will end. And then there was the suicide bombing. Or while they were on the buses, there was a suicide bombing on one of the gates of the airport. So that was also a huge impediment, and the German evacuation almost fell apart. So I'm just gonna take the story and like to advance some more in the story. So one family did manage, after 60 hours on the bus, to get into the Kabul airport and onto American evacuation flight to Saudi Arabia. But Rudabeh and her brother did not manage it. Taliban took them off the bus. She can tell you about it. It was very scary and very heroic of her. And Dana also had other people in safe houses around the city. So we were trying to figure out what to do with them. And by the time August 30th came, the Americans withdrew from the airport, and there was no way of getting out on a flight anymore. So that was kind of the road, that route was blocked. That pathway to leave Afghanistan was blocked. And I think maybe Yotam will tell how we started figuring out land routes out of Afghanistan.
So Yotam, land, sea, air, when you hit a problem in a humanitarian crisis, I know for you, This is just when you get going and start thinking and get creative. So tell me about those early days and thinking about Afghanistan and pick up a little bit from where Roni left off.
Thank you. Thanks, Wayne. It's great to see you. It's great to see Jonathan. It's great to see Roni and Danna and Romesa and Rudabeh and all of my wonderful friends. I wish I was in Japan now. I'm not.
Okay.
In Tel Aviv, so it could be worse.
You're back.
But I was actually in Japan when this whole thing started. And when Roni called me, I was actually really helpless. And I'm not usually helpless. I spend a lot of time in different humanitarian crises, and I think IsraAid is pretty known to always kind of finding a way when other organizations are maybe stuck at the airport or trying to get there. But I was really frustrated because we were seeing how the worst humanitarian crisis of our time is unfolded, and we didn't know how and if we can help. So when Roni called, my first reaction was, I look into it, but I really didn't think that we'll have an added value here. And then few other people called, including a contact from the Israeli-Canadian philanthropist Sylvan Adams, who was also trying to help another group of girls who were mainly cyclists, also the first Afghan cyclist group. So we had the robotics group, we had the cyclist group, we had really a group that we wanted to evacuate, but we really didn't have a clear plan. And then another contact got in touch with me, someone who worked with us while we were working with the Syrian refugees in Lesbos, and he told us that he have a person in Afghanistan with contacts that can secure a safe passage all the way to the border with Tajikistan, all the way to the northern border. And it was just 2 days after the Americans pulled out, early September, and we didn't know if we could make it happen, but Roni, Danna, myself, and a few other friends kind of got together on WhatsApp. Obviously, when I was in Japan, Roni in Tel Aviv, Danna, God knows where she was, and we said, okay, let's get a school bus. I mean, it wasn't a school bus; it was kind of like a school trip. We had a bus that we arranged through our contacts in Afghanistan that picked up 42 people. Some of them were trying to get on a plane, and the plane didn't go, and they rushed to the. Anyway, somehow, by miracle, we were able to get everyone on one bus. And the bus drove all the way to the border with Tajikistan. And surprisingly, it crossed a few Taliban checkpoints. And when they saw the permit that we had, the safe passage that we had, they didn't have any issues. Obviously, all the women and girls and activists, the women and girls were covered with burqa, so their identity could not be revealed. And they reached the border without any harm, surprisingly. But when they reached the border, our first big problem and challenge started, because we didn't have any way to convince the government of Tajikistan to open the border and to allow this group to cross. And then again, all of us came together, and with the support of an anonymous family foundation and some world leaders that I can't really name here, and some big business people who had business in Tajikistan, we were able, after 3 days, where this group of girls and their family members were surrounded by Taliban at the border, to convince the Tajiki government to open the border under one condition, that we have to make sure this group will not stay in Tajikistan more than 24 hours. And I remember we didn't know what to do. And of course, we wanted to make sure that they're safe. So we said, yes, of course, we'll make sure they're out, but we had no idea where we will take them next. And then again, we gathered, and our long-term plan was that they will reach Canada, because we knew Canada was accepting, at that time it was 20,000, now it's up to 40,000 Afghan refugees, but we also knew it will take time. So we knew we needed another country to take them for temporary transit. And that's when our new best friends came into action, and the new best friends are obviously the UAE. Through another contact we had, we were able to reach the Crown Prince of the UAE, Mohammed bin Zayed, who actually agreed personally when he heard that there are Israelis involved, when he heard the story about these amazing Afghan leaders, he immediately agreed to take them after 10 minutes of conversation. And I remember when they told us that the UAE will take them, it was an unbelievable joy. Danna and Roni actually flew to meet the group in Tajikistan. We chartered a plane that was supported by Sylvan Adams. And in 3 days, we were all together in the UAE. And I arrived there from Japan, and they were taken to a humanitarian compound where they are right now. So that was the story of the first evacuation, and maybe we'll get the second one a bit later.
Well, it is indeed amazing that we're talking about waves of rescues at this point, and as if the school bus with 42 people wasn't dramatic enough. Your continued efforts, all three of you, I know continue as we speak, and it really makes this story a one we're all living through and living with, and it's so important that people know more about it. Rudabeh, you're in United Arab Emirates right now, and I know your dream of continuing your studies and your activities in robotics continues. But tell us how you were feeling when you're on that bus, and when your future and your uncertainty was so unknown and scary. Can you share a little bit with us about what that journey is before you tell us about where you are now?
First of all, I want to have my warm greeting to all the viewers who are watching us right now, and to all my dear friends. First of all, when I just left Afghanistan, and I was intending to leave my home and my city, Dana just told me to leave, and maybe in Kabul you have good chances to get into the airport. But that time I didn't have any idea that where can I stay and where can I go. So in Afghanistan, the Taliban do not let the women go to another city or get out of the homes without any man, and the man can be just a brother, son, or husband, or father. So I just took my 14 years old brother without having any idea of where can we stay, and I just get into the buses which are just going to Kabul from Herat, and being in that bus just took like 24 hours, and without no food, no any other things. So I just passed from Herat to Kabul like in 24 hours. And that time when I just reached to Kabul, I just had like chances to get into the buses, which they intended to get into the airport. But as you know, sometimes Taliban do not let certain bus into the airport. So I just wanted to have all the chances. And as Roni said, one night it was like, I just could be in a bus. That bus was for the workers and colleagues of the German government. That time, I had the invitation letter to the, Germany and get into the airport. But that night, suddenly my name was not in the list, and the Taliban just forced everyone to get out of the airport. It was my last chance, and I had to show them my invitation letter, but no one of them just heard me, and they just started firing their shotguns and yelling on everyone, screaming on everyone just to get out of the airport. And I was so close to the airport, I was so close to the plane, but that night, it was the most scariest night of my life, because I had my 14 years old brother with me. And then it was 2:30 a.m. almost, and I and my brother just went to sit somewhere next to the street. And that night, I just was crying, and even I didn't want to show my brother because I didn't want him to see me so weak. And that night, I just called Dana and said, this also didn't work. So I just was jumping from one bus to another bus. And that night, which I was in Kabul, I just really felt that everything is just going to be finished if I cannot get out of Afghanistan. For example, I cannot continue my education, go to my university anymore. I just should stay in home. And as you know, that time we just heard lots of news that the Taliban are going to, for example, not let the women get out of the home. The women should stay in home, give birth, take care of the children. And that we can see that it also happened, almost happened. So at the end of, I was just jumping from one bus to another bus. And it really made me tired, and even my brother, because it was his first trip. But we had to deal with it, and we had to figure it out. And we just had to get out of Afghanistan because we didn't want to go back to our home in Herat. And at the end, it was like 30 of August. We just had the invitation letters to Germany. We got into the bus for Germany, and also our names were in the list. But there was a suicide attack again near to the airport, and that time they didn't let the bus to get into the airport. Suddenly, Donna just called me that Rudabeh just not go back to home, go to that address, and there is a bus, you know, it's like going to Tajikistan, so you must take it and get it. So I was just running and rushing, like in 5 minutes I could take it. And when I just entered the bus, I saw lots of girls who were wearing burqas. It's a full cover that the Taliban, you know, like that cover. And then I saw some of the families of my friends and robotics team, and these girls who had burqa, they were like cyclists, and also we had a singer with us. So when I just, you know, sat into that bus, I felt that I'm just going to leave Afghanistan. Even we didn't understand how to leave it, but I was so hopeful for that. And yes, now we are in UAE and everyone is safe. And about being so scared in Afghanistan, I really remember that when we were crossing the border, all these girls who are ethnic minority and they are Hazara people, they just were shaking, and they were asking me that, do this Taliban ask for the passport or ID card? I said, I'm not sure if they really ask or no, because in the passport or ID card, it's written the, you know, the nationality. So they were like shaking, and they were just so scared and afraid. And we also were afraid if the Taliban do not let us, and if the Taliban know who we are really. But it's really happened, and we could cross the border. Then we were in Tajikistan for 3 days. We just met our friends there from IsraAid, and then we flew to UAE like 6th of September, and now everyone is safe, everyone is happy, and they will just move to Canada soon.
Your story, Rudabeh, is so harrowing and also inspiring, and it's been shared by some of the people on this panel. But I imagine no one is more proud than your mother, who's also joining us, not from Abu Dhabi or Dubai, but in a different part of Europe, in Albania. And I know your sister Romesa is with her now. You're not together as a family. You're refugees in different modes of transport now. But Romesa, maybe you can share with us a little bit about your journey and how you got to Albania, and how your family is coping during these challenging moments when you don't really know exactly what your future looks like.
Hello, everybody. Right now, I'm really nervous. Sorry.
That's okay.
About my future, you know, when Rudabeh left Afghanistan, left Herat, where we used to live. It was on my birthday. At that moment, I was really crying. I cried all the time because I didn't know when I'm going to see my sister again. It was about a month after he left Afghanistan. I got a notification on my WhatsApp that, yeah, it was a message for me that we are going to get you out of Afghanistan, so get ready. We got ready, we prepared something for ourselves. After they, and at the day they told us to come to Kabul, because we are going to take you to condos and get you out of Afghanistan via the border. So we did it. We got a bus and we had about 24 hours trip to Kabul. After we arrived to Kabul, we stayed in a safe place for 6 days. After 6 days, they told us to go to Mahmud Khan bridge. There is a central bus station over there. After that, we took a bus and went to condos. But unfortunately, condos was the terrible trip that I have ever had in my life. We unfortunately we had one of our buses and our deer had a crash. When we went to, we got condos, they told us to stay in bus station because we are going to leave Afghanistan about 2 hours later, but it didn't happen. After that, they told us to go to the border. There is a safe place, safe home, and condos. We got our deal. We stayed about 2 or 3 hours. I was so tired because during the trip, my trip from Kabul to condos, I was just crying because I'm going to leave Afghanistan. But I was sleeping in that home that suddenly I woke up and saw some people were yelling, some people were crying. I didn't know what happened. I just wanted to figure out what happened. There were some women next to me. I asked them what happened. They told us that Taliban came and they surrounded the home, and they took out all the men and asked them some questions that, what's your name, where are you from, where are you going to? And when they asked them where, in which mosque do you go for praying? But after 5 or about 10 minutes, we saw that men came, and Taliban told them to don't get out of this home, because if there is a crash or if there is an accident, it's on you. After 2 or 3 hours, they told us to, hurry up. You should leave this home as soon as possible. We did it. We left that home and we got a bus and went to a safe place. There was a hotel. We stayed one night in our deer, but after one night, they decided we should leave condos and go to Mazar Sharif. We went to Mazar Sharif and stayed in our there for 3 days in a hotel because our first plan failed to go via Sharkhan Bandar border. Then we went to Mazar Sharif airport. We got a plane and went to Tajikistan airport. We stayed in our there for 3 days at the airport because they didn't allow us to get out of that airport. But on October 2nd, we fortunately came here in Albania. Right now, I'm with my family, with my mom, with my 2 brothers and my sister. And at the moment that I was in the plane, that we wanted to come to Tajikistan, I was crying because they announced that we are going to leave Afghanistan in 4 minutes, and it was, it was really sadness thing for me. But fortunately, I lost my hope that because I was in third years of my medical school in Afghanistan. I was always thinking that everything over and how should I start again? But after I came here and right now I'm here, I figured out that yeah, there is another hope too. I can start again. I can do again. I can be sorry. I can do everything from the beginning. Right now, I'm in safe. My sister and my brother are safe, and it's the best thing that I have ever thought. And yeah, we are fine. We are really happy, and thank you for everything.
Well, we are so touched by your strength, and both you and your sister described tears, but what you did to overcome your fears and what any refugee has to go through is really remarkable. I wonder if you, since you have your mom there right next to you, I know she doesn't speak English as strongly, but I just have one question that I'd love to ask her about what was the hardest thing to leave behind in Afghanistan? What at a point at which she realized she needed to leave, what was hard to leave behind, since all of her life was in Afghanistan?
اگه سخت‌ترین چیزی که در افغانستان دارید تو به نظرتون میاد که تک بشی آماده بشی به این چیه؟
She says that you know the one thing that I'm really sad about is that I left my homeland and I came here.
Sorry, can I also?
Sure, Rudabeh, go ahead.
Exactly the day when we were just crossing the border, I felt that this is not Rudabeh who is leaving Afghanistan. This is just the body of Rudabeh which is leaving Afghanistan. And my spirit was in Afghanistan. You know, my father just died 2 years ago, and now my father is in Afghanistan. And besides that, my family were also in Afghanistan. As you know, when we say a country is like a home for us, and it means that you're just leaving your home to another new home and with new people who you do not know them and who you do not know their language, their culture. So it's so hard for you. We 20 years of living in the same country, in the same home, and then living in suddenly in such a bad situation is so hard for everyone. And even we cannot imagine, everyone just loved his or her hometown and country. So it's so hard for them to leave their people, like 36 million of the people in such a bad situation. And I really hope that one day all these bad situations go away, and again people in Afghanistan can live like the past and can live so usual. And I want to encourage the people who are in Afghanistan, as Donna all the time just told me, tomorrow is a better day. You know, it was 29th of August, and tomorrow of that day, it was the only day and the last day which people could get into the airport. And I just wrote to Dana and said, I'm so tired, I will just leave to Herat as soon as possible if tomorrow nothing happened. And she said, no, tomorrow will be a good day, as I tell you all the time. And tomorrow of that day, it was good day because first I get into a bus to get into the airport, but there was a suicide attack, and she even didn't tell me about the bus which is preparing to get into Tajikistan. And suddenly she calls me and told me, go into the bus. And when I just were passing to Kunduz, I just wrote to her that this was the most you know, it was the best thing for me to come with this bus, not to go to airport, so I can meet Tajikistan also, and then it's a good you know, trip for me. And it happened, and we are just trying to write a history. Dana love Rudabeh, and this is our trend.
Don, I want to come back to you because I thought it was very telling that the word that you wanted to underscore in this drama was friendship. And it's so obvious from your interactions. I think when I saw you last, you were carrying bags of rice, that you've continued this relationship. This is far more than a journalist story for you. A few of our audience members have asked about the Israel connection and at what point it became either obvious or they, some of the refugees became aware of your Israeli background, and for Roni and later Yotam. I know in a humanitarian crisis, people aren't usually that focused on politics, particularly if you have more immediate needs. But I'm wondering just sort of how that played out and at what point you knew you were friends.
I'm just going to pick up on the first part of that question, and also say a couple more words about Ayesha, who's here with us, who hasn't said so much. So Ayesha was married at age 13, or married at 12 and had her first child at 13, and hasn't had a lot of education and doesn't speak any English. And she is the most intelligent, loving, compassionate, and ambitious person that you could ever want to meet, and especially ambitious for her daughters. And both Romesa and Rudabeh were in medical school last year before the Taliban took over. And I just want to say that, and her love for her daughters and my love for her daughters as well, is not only friendship, but truly, I think, and also Roni and Yotam, I think we really have come to love this group of people that we've been working with and assisting and trying to walk hand in hand with through this really complicated period of time. I was so touched to listen to Rudabeh and Romesa speaking. Romesa, you also spoke really, really beautifully. And so yes, it's a lot more than being a regular journalist. I suppose it starts like Roni with liking people's stories and liking to reach out and meet people and hear what they have to say. And I think it then just might be my character that I often, my mom would say, get a little over involved. And this is definitely over involvement. And that's right. Last time you saw me, I went to London for the weekend and then went back to Albania with 20 kg of rice, because now that the Taliban threat is over for those guys in Albania, they're constantly complaining about the rice quality of Albanian rice. And they only want like very special Afghan rice, which I managed to get in London. And about, I wanted to just tell you another thing, which was part of the story, which was just fabulous, that when Yotam was talking, there were so many people, and a lot of Israelis actually, and a lot of supporters of IsraAid and Jews all over the world, especially in Canada, who really just helped out in all kinds of ways, quiet ways and big ways, and ways that have been acknowledged and not. And one part of this story, which to me is just so unbelievable, it's like a movie, has to do with the passports. Because although through all sorts of connections, not connections, we made our way into Tajikistan and then into the United Arab Emirates and later into Albania, and now trying to get everyone going to Canada soon, inshallah, as they say. But you cannot actually move without passports. And a lot of our folks didn't have passports. And when this whole story was happening, me, Roni, Yotam, Charlene in California, we were just reaching out to everyone. We just were not at all shy to call people late at night, early in the morning, to ask if they had any connection or any way to help. So, I mean, there were so many parts of this story. I mean, that's just one little story, and we could go on and on about the many, many of all the people that helped us. I see you have a question. And about the Israel and Jewish thing, I'm going to throw back maybe at Yotam and Roni, because it's a thing that we are Israelis. And for some of the people we were helping, and Rudabeh knew long ago that I'm in Israel, but a lot of the people on our group only found out when they reached to Tajikistan, and we're like, hi.
So Roni, describe that dynamic a little bit. Was it a?
I remember that they were asking us, some of the people were all coming up to us and saying, when you speak amongst yourselves, you don't speak English. What language are you speaking? And then when one of the guys asked me, I told him, guess. And he said, guess where I'm from? And he said, the US, the UK. So I said, no, it's the Middle East. So it went on to Lebanon and Egypt. And what's in between Lebanon and Egypt? And they couldn't, like, I think they couldn't like guess that that's what it was. But I think I don't think it was an issue for them at all, or at least not that I felt anything of that. I felt nothing but love from them, and I loved them too. It was like Danna knew some of the people before, but I didn't know them. And when we were still sitting at our desks, at my desk in Tel Aviv, and all of a sudden our contact on the ground at the Tajiki Afghan border sent us. We were so, it was like heart-wrenching. We were waiting and we knew we had like an hour until they cross, and all of a sudden after an hour we get this little video on WhatsApp of like figures in blue burqas crossing the bridge, and we just all burst out crying, and like all the anxiety and all of that was that collected, and realizing that these people's lives were actually in danger, and we could put them, there might be a possibility that we would put them in danger. And so, and then after that, Danna and I just hopped on a plane to Istanbul and then to Dushanbe, met everybody there. And just to circle the story about Ayesha and Rudabeh, when I met Rudabeh, we were talking in a room at the hotel, and she was saying, 10 days ago, I didn't even have water to drink or a bed or food. And now I'm like a princess, and I have a bed and I have white sheets. And then she told me my mother is in Herat, but she's not, she told me she didn't believe her that she was out of Afghanistan. She thought that Rudabeh was just saying that to make her not worry. So her, and she said, until I see Danna or Roni, I'm not going to believe you. So we did a video call with her, and it was just so sad because she was crying, and you know, who could have known that after a month later, I mean, we could get her out also, dear Ayesha, which is such a wonderful woman. And so that was kind of a circle that closed, and was very emotional for me.
It's just so incredible, and it's such a reminder, that the disruption of families, disruption of communities, that this is, you know, there's so many different levels of what a refugee family continues to go through, even as they wait in transit for another place. Yotam, you've done this all over the world and in so many different languages, and you've done it proudly as an Israeli representing an Israeli humanitarian organization. And I've been reflecting on that your earlier comment that at first you thought, hey, maybe we have no value added here. So I have two questions for you. Just one, where are we in this now, and what more can come? And secondly, we have several comments and questions from people in the audience who've asked what they can do, and is there a way for them to get involved? And I know IsraAid has a wide network of people that you're involved with, and not every mission or every operation is appropriate for everyone, but curious just how you would want to direct the attention of people in the audience that are interested in helping in some way.
Thank you. I'll just quickly touch on the Israel question and connection, because for us at IsraAid, it is very important. You know, the organization is called IsraAid and not the Red Cross or Doctors Without Borders for specific reasons. And it's not because we think we're the best, not at all. We actually think we have a responsibility to help. And I wish we could help more. And I see this operation as an amazing opportunity, not only to save lives and not only to support people, but to really build bridges and change people's perspectives. And we've seen this, very strongly with this amazing group of Afghan leaders who have become close friends. And not only friends, they became ambassadors and leaders in their community and advocates. And I know that every Shabbat now, we're getting hundreds of messages from Afghans saying Shabbat Shalom or Chanukah Sameach or whatever. So I do see how the added value of this operation beyond the humanitarian value is the bridge building, which is so incredibly crucial now in this world. Going forward in terms of the humanitarian needs, if we're talking about Afghanistan, the situation on the ground is beyond terrible. There is a terrible food crisis, obviously political crisis, security. There's still hundreds of thousands of people who are trying to get out because they're targeted by the Taliban. So, we are still trying in different ways to help. We are not currently organizing additional evacuations, but we're trying to help in whatever way we can for different connections and network and partnerships. And also a big focus, and this is actually led by Danna, is the resettlement, because we want to make sure that the people that we did evacuated reach their final destination. And the good news that we can share here is that they're very likely to be resettled in Canada in the very near future. It wasn't easy. It was a very long process, but it's looking very positive. In fact, the first member of our group was actually have another incredible story because she was the real last, the last Jewish woman in Afghanistan. It was actually just made it safely right now as we speak. She's on her way to her daughter in Toronto in Canada. So, and the rest of our group, our groups in Albania and Abu Dhabi are likely to follow very soon. So that's a lot of our focus when it comes to Afghanistan. And of course, unfortunately, there are so many other crises around the world, from the typhoon in the Philippines and even the tornado in Kentucky that our teams with IsraAid, we have now 250 members of our staff around the world are responding to. So the last question is, how can people get involved? I think, first of all, it is very important that this story will be shared because, as we said, for us, it's not just about humanitarian, it's about bridge building. And I think everyone on this call here today, I see we have a really nice turnout, is an ambassador for bridge building, for refugees. It's very much, we really believe that the story of the Afghan refugees has, from a historical and value perspective, very strong Jewish connections. So it's very important that each individual in their community will be able to sponsor refugees, support refugees, advocate for refugees. That's number one. Number two, share this story. And at IsraAid, we are always looking for people who can get involved, either support similar humanitarian missions in different ways, or join us as staff or volunteers. And I know a lot of our US team members and board members are here, and there's so many opportunities to get involved. Just go on our website and join us.
Wow. Yeah, Donna, you want to say something real quick?
I think that maybe we're running out of time, but I do want to say something really important, which also has to do with us as Jews or as Israelis, and more than that, as human beings, is about responding. And I saw a lot in the comments, people are all talking about the Holocaust, and I've often thought about my mom's side of the family during the 30s that was looking for a way out of Poland and Austria. I don't want to make comparisons, and the Taliban returning to power in Afghanistan is not the Holocaust, so I don't like those comparisons. And I also don't love the word saving. It's not like we're saving people, we're assisting people who are terrified and things might get worse in Afghanistan. But the idea of response, to me, is something that's very important, because I know that my mom's grandparents and aunts and uncles did write a lot of letters to other academic institutions where they were involved. They were, like many of our Afghans, they had connections, they reached out, and mostly they didn't get responses. Maybe it's because then there was no WhatsApp and they wrote letters and it took 6 months, and then till the letters returned, they didn't get responses. And I also know when I was first talking to Rudabeh, the first time I cried was when she showed me a list of all the people that she had written to, if you remember, Rudabeh, in pencil, all the emails she had written to asking for help, and all the Afghans who, you know, were encouraged to dream big these last 20 years and worked with foreigners and with Americans who then wrote and didn't get responses, or that official emails were closed down and they just got no response. And that feeling of being alone and of not having anyone paying you attention or talking to you or treating you like a human being as you should is sort of hard to fathom. And so when you say about what people should do, if anyone gets a question or gets a request, even if you have nothing to offer, every morning I wake up and I have dozens and dozens of people asking for help. And I know Yotam and Roni exactly the same thing, and they are heart-wrenching. And typically we don't have much to offer, if anything, but we always try and write back and try and engage a little bit to the extent that we can, just to make sure that the people that turn to us know that we are listening to them and we care about them.
So I can't underscore all the people who have expressing interest here. Yotam's suggestions: get involved with IsraAid, get involved with this issue, meet some of these remarkable people. In our own communities, we have Afghan refugees that are moving into different parts of certainly in North America. A big shout out to Canada, as we heard, for the large numbers, and I know for Rudabeh and for the Nouri family, this is one of the potential landing spots for many of their family members. I wonder if we could get one more quick question, and I know we're past the top of the hour, but I would like to ask Ayesha. Donna spoke about her strength and keeping your family together, and you talked about how hard it was to leave your country behind. What's your hope for your family and for your daughters for the coming year? Now that you're out of Afghanistan and you've had to leave behind something very painful, what is your hope for your family for the future?
آرزوی شما برای فامیل شما، برای اولاداتون، برای دختران شما، برای کشور که ترک کردین اینجا بودین چیه؟ آرزوی شما مثل سیجو. آرزوی اینه که خدا من زودتر صلح سراسری بر کشورمون بیاره، مردم ما آرام باشن، ما اولادای ما از اینکه مهاجر شدیم بتونیم اینجا زندگی مجدد شروع کنیم. خیلی انشالله درس تعلیمی بتونم درس تعلیم خود ادامه بدم. دیگه به کشور خود چی آرزو داریم؟ کشور خود دیگه آرزوی امنیت خیلی زودترین فرصت آرزو دارم، دعا میکنم که انشالله خداوند امنیت سراسری به کشورمون بیاره و مردم ما آرام خوش و آرام زندگی کنن.
She says, you know, she left everything behind, and her only hope is that we can go ahead with our education, we can go to school again, we can start again. And for my people and for my country, I just hope peace and everything.
Well, what a beautiful hope and wish, both for your family and for your people who were left behind and are still there and are still struggling, as well as very much in limbo, as many refugees throughout his history. And this is a record-breaking period of refugees, as IsraAid has expanded its mission to address many of these crises around the world. We want to thank everyone for being with us today. This story tells itself, and it was really a remarkable privilege to be hearing from allies of people in need of rescue and resettlement, and from refugees themselves today. For those of us who come from refugee families, as many have pointed out, this touches us in a very personal way and reminds us that our moral antennas need to be on at all moments. And that's part of what it means to be a citizen of the world today. So thank you all for being with us. For those of you that got a taste of our webinar series for the first time, you should know we do this every week. We'll be back next Sunday from Kfar HaYarok, a special school in Israel, in English, the Green Village, where we'll be looking at youth musical education in Israel and having some remarkable student performances in a multicultural environment and landscape. It's really a great opportunity to celebrate some of the magic that can come out of this kind of arts-based education. We hope you'll come back and join us. Everybody, thank you for being with us today. Have a safe week. Lehitraot.